Vanessa went out onto the balcony of the huge house and watched as more and more people gathered for the holiday. This girl always thought that the whole world was a magical land, and her life was an endless party. Her parents tore her away from her thoughts and dreams, and she reluctantly turned her head. Her dad and mom were very rich, and Vanessa had never wondered where it all came from. She just adored her parents very much, who always pampered her and never refused her anything. Also, the girl did not wonder who they really were until one day it was too late. Unexpectedly for everyone, a fire broke out in the house, and it spread very strongly, so that people barely had time to run out of the house. That evening, the girl thought for the first time that her parents had enemies, or they themselves were someone's enemies. In an instant, a weapon appeared in the hands of Vanessa's father and mother, and the father demandingly asked the nanny to take their daughter away from here. Barbara immediately grabbed the teenage girl in her arms and, closing her eyes, rushed away, passing the burning areas of the house. She managed to save Vanessa, but it was all over for her parents that day, and the girl was left alone. Tears did not stop flowing on her face. She could not believe that her parents were no longer there, and the nanny asked her to follow her. Encouraging the orphan, the nanny promised her that they could make her very strong, even stronger than her parents. Vanessa only saw the nanny as strong now, but she was only strong in protecting the children in her care. At the same time, Barbara could teach the girl so that she could also protect children like her. At first, the girl did not quite understand what the nanny meant because she had just lost her parents and was left alone. But then she realized that there was no need to despair, and she always trusted Barbara. So she agreed to become her student after this event. Vanessa spent the next 8 years in an elite nanny academy, the location of which was classified. Barbara had taken her under her wing, raised and trained her, and now she felt much stronger after these years. This woman became the director of an elite nanny academy, which even pleased Vanessa. And now, after numerous lessons and training, the girl was ready to take on the first serious task. Shortly before her visit to the director, Barbara was talking about a generous offer with a certain Oscar. The headmistress promised that with such a salary, they would be able to provide the best employees with many years of experience, but this person needed a special worker who had never worked with anyone before. Barbara took out a list of employees who were in line for the first task and presented it to the client. Oscar wondered if all the people whose names were on the list were competent. The headmistress vouched that all their graduates were proficient in all the basic skills. They were all very well versed in early childhood development and psychology. It was also important for the employees to know how to provide first aid to the victims. Self-defense was also taught here, so that the employees had the opportunity to protect the child at the right time. It was considered important that all employees knew how to drive a car and other vehicles. Well, cybersecurity was also given great importance. So employees were trained in computer science. Barbara also named the qualities of housekeeping, financial planning, politics, and more. Then the headmistress asked Mr. Parvalone why he needed an elite nanny. Oscar Parvalone recalled how 2 weeks ago he talked to one person. He admitted that he had screwed up in front of his master and promised to fix everything. But Oscar only needed the ledgers. He was going to issue a bill to the guilty person, and he would need to pay it. Then Oscar said that he would notify this Jack when he needed his services. And then he added that he needed more milk at the moment. But Jack didn't quite understand him. It's just that his son, Cody, loves chocolate milk very much. And now Oscar has demanded that Jack provide it. This boy had just approached Oscar, and the man wondered why this child was so nervous now. But the child took a threatening position and demanded a double portion from Jack for his oversight. Oscar then asked the kid why he did not behave quietly as promised. But he also had his own requirements. At that moment, Jack came up and with trembling hands brought a carton of milk. Asking if it was still needed, Oscar shouted in the negative. And Cody confirmed his order and reached for the package. Oscar grabbed his son, threw him on his shoulder and was about to leave, while he still continued to demand milk, and now, sitting in the office. Oscar did not say any special reasons, It was just that the mother of his son was no longer there, and he needed a person to take care of the child. Barbara assured him that his child was in good hands and then asked if he wanted to choose someone in particular. Oscar began to look at the folders with the files of the employees, but he did not dwell on them for too long. Very soon, he pointed to Vanessa's resume, which for some reason he liked pulling out the paper. Oscar demanded that this particular girl be given to raise his son. However, Vanessa's specialty was in cybersecurity, and the headmistress asked if he had a large internet network at home. Having received a negative answer, Barbara stated that in such a case, she could not recommend the employee. Instead, she offered another one who also speaks Italian, and another knows self-defense well. But Oscar did not want to listen any further and repeated again that he wanted to hire Vanessa. The director looked at the client with some reproach, but still, she could not refuse him because he paid well. Soon, she called Vanessa to her, and she was not long in coming, immediately appearing at Barbara's. The girl, of course, was worried because this was her first task, but she believed that she would succeed as she entered the office. She saw Barbara, who was standing with her back to her and was in no hurry to turn. In the same position, the director notified the girl that she had been offered a task today, and she had already managed to rejoice without hesitation. Vanessa cried out that she was completely ready, and that she had been ready for a very long time. But Barbara interrupted her, admitting that she was not really the one who chose the task. For the student, she wondered why it happened. And the director, turning to her, explained that her client had chosen himself. Then Barbara went to the table and, taking out a folder, briefly told that this man's name was Oscar. Hearing this name, the girl was perplexed because she knew this name very well. Vanessa remembered a headline on the front page of the newspaper that said Oscar had been hit back. It was a mafia family which, according to the girl, was involved in the fire in her house many years ago. Barbara immediately advised him not to accept this task because although she had passed it on, Vanessa had the right to refuse. But the girl could not refuse the first task after everything that the former nanny had done for her. At the same time, the memories of the past flooded back to her, and she still did not understand why they did this. Up until this time, the girl had thought that she would never get an answer. But now she saw that she had a chance. She remembered Barbara's words when she had promised to make her stronger. And now she was like that. Without a moment's hesitation, Vanessa declared that she was ready to accept the assignment and proceed immediately. The headmistress herself doubted that it was worth taking him because of the girl's past. But that is why she agreed. Vanessa also thought about the fact that this Oscar had a small child. And since this is just a child, he needs protection. And the girl was ready to provide it. In addition, Vanessa hoped to find out the truth about what happened on that tragic day. After that, Barbara met Oscar again. And the only thing that interested him was whether the girl had signed the contract or not. The director confirmed, and Vanessa herself had already managed to pack her suitcase and was ready to go with her employer. And as soon as she appeared on the doorstep, Barbara decided to immediately introduce her to the person for whom she would work. She called his name in full. While he stood a little aside as if he did not want to communicate with the future nanny, however, he still turned, and now Vanessa could see the man with whom she would have to communicate. Oscar was young and very handsome, which the girl did not expect, and even forgot that she needed to say hello. Oscar decided to break her silence and asked Barbara if the nurse could talk at all. Because of such a question, the girl thought that he was a complete idiot and continued to examine his face. Then she spoke, stretched out her hand to him, greeted him, and introduced herself. The girl also said that she was pleased to meet and work for him, to which he reciprocated. After that, Oscar asked the girl to sit in the car when she was ready. And while he was gone, Barbara decided to briefly repeat with the student the duties that she would have to perform. The director also reminded that Vanessa should not reveal secrets and also not put the boss in an awkward position, except for not to hack and not to fall in love, to which the girl promised that she would not let her mentor down. Vanessa was sure that she could cope with everything and was already proud of herself in advance. So with a clear conscience, she went to the car. The driver, Adam, immediately approached her and offered to help her put her suitcase in the trunk. The girl seemed cute to him, and he decided to give the new employee a little advice. For future work, he advised that Vanessa should not let herself be frightened because the child was only 4 years old. But she was not afraid of anything. Politely thanking the man for the advice, the girl went to take her place in the car. There she saw that Oscar was with his son, which was a little unexpected for her. Still, she pulled herself together and immediately spoke to the boy. Immediately clarifying whether he was Oscar's son, the kid began to introduce himself as Cordell. But his father interrupted him and added that everyone just called him Cody. Vanessa did not forget about politeness and expressed how pleased she was to meet this boy. Cody then told his father that he didn't trust this woman and that she smelled like oranges. Vanessa didn't understand why the boy said that and even sniffed herself discreetly to see if she really smelled like that. After that, Vanessa asked Oscar where they were going. The boy decided to get ahead of his father and gave out that they were going to a large mansion in the city of commoners. Oscar decided to correct his son's words a little and explained that they had recently moved from the south of the country. The girl thought it was far away that they decided to move to Chicago, and she took out her laptop. The owner immediately told her that there was Wi-Fi in the car, if she needed it, and she noticed that there was not even a password. Then Vanessa heard a click and immediately noticed that the button on the door owner's side had gone down. Oscar immediately explained that they only drive with locked doors for safety. The girl objected, because if some incident happens, then it is better to keep the doors unlocked. She pressed a button on her side, but Oscar decided he was right and blocked the door again. He then explained that if the kidnappers tried to take his son at a traffic light, it would be better to block him. Vanessa understood his train of thought and did not argue anymore. Returning to the laptop screen again, at this time, Cody decided to ask if his father had noticed the orange smell. As he leaned over to the new employee at the same time, the girl thought about the fact that he had a Wi-Fi in his car without a password. And at this time, he was giving lectures on security. Then the boy began to look at her laptop and asked what she was doing there. Vanessa pressed one of the buttons without further explanation, and the window between them and the driver rolled down. Adam immediately turned to them and asked the boss what he wanted. But he didn't need anything, and Cody noticed that his new nanny was quite cunning and skillful. Then Vanessa pressed the button again, and the glass between them and the driver rose again. After that, she turned to Oscar and offered to put a password on Wi-Fi if he was so worried about security. Oscar squinted at the girl, but at the same time, he understood that she was right and agreed. After a while, they arrived at the large mansion of the Parvalone family on the outskirts of Chicago. Adam immediately suggested that Vanessa follow Oscar, and he would take care of the luggage himself. The girl instantly examined the situation and was surprised that there were no guards and even no cameras. As they entered the house, Oscar explained that Vanessa's room was on the second floor, second from the left. Then he turned to the boy and explained that now he would be with this girl. But the boy wanted to be with his father. Oscar still insisted that from now on, Cody should contact Vanessa for any questions. He also decided to save his son from traveling, and he was only capricious in response. Thinking that his father considered him incapable of business, Oscar really did not want to involve the boy in the spy. But he kept saying that his father needed him. This made little Cody so angry that he threw his drink on the floor and ran out of the house. Oscar explained that it was hard for him now without his mother. And Vanessa noticed that the boy had become very attached to his father. Then the girl asked if Cody knew what Oscar was really doing. In response, the man asked if Vanessa knew this, and she immediately remembered the notes about his affairs. In response, she only admitted that she had read some of the news but did not really delve into his business. Oscar, nevertheless, decided to tell the girl in more detail, trying to be extremely honest with her. The man admitted that he was actually the deputy of the Parvalone Mafia Don. Vanessa was well aware that being the right hand of the head of the Mafia allowed him to be almost on the same level as the Don. Oscar went on to admit that he has a lot of enemies, more than anyone else, and he was more than sure that they would do anything to get to his only son. This boy was very important. Since he was the heir to the surname Oscar, Oscar ended up saying that it was for the protection of the boy that he needed her. and the girl promised that she would do everything necessary. This reassured Oscar, and he decided that they should have no problem with this. Immediately, Vanessa began to ask about her responsibilities and listed some things she could do about cybersecurity. But there was no need for that. Her only concern was Cody. Although she had no idea that she needed to be a nanny nurse, then she began to talk again about how he had no bodyguards, and the staff needed to be checked. Oscar approached Vanessa again and repeated that her only task was not to take her eyes off his son. Then the girl noticed a bag of drink thrown on the floor which Cody had left. Oscar then added that after the boy had run away, she should follow him. Vanessa agreed with him and immediately ran outside to look for the boy. But he was nowhere to be seen, and then she heard him quarreling and shouting with someone. Paying attention there, Vanessa saw that Cody had already been grabbed by some men and pushed into the trunk of the van. She immediately rushed after them, hoping to catch up and save the boy from the kidnappers. However, the car had already managed to drive away, and the girl realized that on the very first day, trouble had happened to her, looking after the departing van. She was well aware that a child had been kidnapped, and then she saw Oscar standing in the doorway, and she did not know how to tell him about it properly. For a moment, she thought that it was still worth running after the car, but she knew that it would definitely not help her, and she rushed back to the house to discuss everything with the owner and take the necessary measures. He began to ask what had happened, and the girl explained that several masked kidnappers had taken the boy. Oscar immediately grabbed the worker by the arm and began to push her to follow the car. Vanessa didn't mind at all. On the contrary, she really wanted to save little Cody. Grabbing her bag, she asked the owner for the keys to the car so that she could cope faster, but Adam has already run to her, who will be her driver in this task and will take her where she needs to go. The girl promised Oscar that she would definitely find the boy and asked him to report to the police for the time being. But he bent over her when she had already got into the car. He said that it would not be necessary if she did her job well. The next moment, the car was already rushing at high speed in the direction where the van had gone. The driver asked where to go, and Vanessa indicated when to turn right and when to turn left. She also opened her laptop and decided to use a special program to search for cars. She had memorized the number of the van well and was now going to track it, which she knew very well. Adam asked what she was doing, and Vanessa briefly explained to him how she was going to find the car. The girl also looked at the cameras and saw that this van lit up no more than a minute ago. At the same time, Vanessa saw that everything was going very easily and suspected that it could be a trap. Then the girl asked to turn left, and after 2 more traffic lights to the right, and they would be able to catch up with them. The nanny also wanted to hack into the nearest network towers so that there would be even more opportunities to find the car as soon as possible. Then she started muttering what else she was going to do. But Adam didn't quite understand all these terms. Soon Vanessa found 3 phone signals in the building they were approaching. When they arrived, they immediately saw the kidnappers' van and the girl prepared to act further. She asked Adam to go around the building and wait for her on the other side until she returned with the boy. There was a bodyguard at the entrance. It looked like he was a professional, but the girl found it strange that he was without a gun. Approaching him, she immediately warned him that she was well trained and asked him to open the door in a good way. He only leaned against the door more comfortably and refused to let the visitor in uniform pass. Without waiting another minute, the girl sharply bent her arms at the elbow and then hit the thug even more sharply in the solar plexus. From the blow, he sharply bent in half, and Vanessa immediately struck him with the edge of her palm on his neck. After that, a huge, pumped-up man was lying on the floor, dropping his sunglasses, and could not move yet. Then Vanessa entered the building and found herself in the kitchen, in which for some reason there were none of the cooks, no one at all. Noticing a metal round tray on one of the tables, the girl decided to arm herself with it. A little further on the opposite side, there was another door with a round window. Cautiously peering through it, Vanessa saw a half-lit hall, and there was a woman and a man guarding Cody, who was tied up. Immediately, the girl, slamming the door loudly, burst into the hall and was ready to fight with 2 criminals. They in turn also prepared for a fight and instantly took up a fighting position. Vanessa immediately swung the tray, intending to hit the man, but he managed to bend down and she missed, immediately getting up. This bandit swung his fist at the girl, but she managed to block his blow with a tray. He felt incredible pain in his fist, and while he was moving away, Vanessa swung her leg to try on the heel on the bandit's face, but she managed to repel this blow in time and threw the girl's leg back, preparing to strike back. However, Vanessa was not at a loss and immediately hit the bandit on the head with a metal tray. While the two were trying to recover from the carnage, the girl, without wasting a second, immediately ran up to the boy without even untying it. She put a coat on her shoulder and hurried out of the building. On the street, from the car, the driver shouted praise at her. Glad that she succeeded putting the boy in the car, she pressed him to her as if he were her own. Then she began to untie the ropes and ask if he was injured and how he was feeling. As she watched Cody sit bent over, she remembered how she had sat in the same way, frightened after the fire in her house. Vanessa hugged the boy again and promised that everything would be fine now, and that he should not worry anymore. At this time, Adam coughed a little and realized that he was not feeling very well, but he still had a task to do. At this time, the girl noticed that something was wrong with him and became worried. But then she saw that his intentions were not friendly. The next moment, she saw a gun pointed at her, and Adam himself demanded that she get out of the car. Then he added that Vanessa should clean herself, leaving the child behind, and for this she would receive 2 million. The girl understood this as that this man was in cahoots with the kidnappers, and was now going to finish what he started. Adam explained that he had nothing to do with the jerks Oscar had hired to test her. Vanessa realized now that it was a test, and the driver added that the owner did not lose sight of the boy, and now he could not miss such an opportunity. The girl shielded the boy with her body and said that she would never allow him to do what he had planned. However, Adam insisted that she do the smart thing and just take the money. Instead of being left with a hole in her forehead, out of the corner of her eye, Vanessa noticed an open laptop and decided to use it, continuing to distract the driver with a conversation. She reached for the device with her hand and began to feel for the right button. When Adam heard the nanny refuse again, he prepared to pull the trigger to finish her off. Soon, the girl's fingers were in the right place, and she pressed the button without hesitation. At the same moment, the wipers began to work, sliding a quiet noise on the windshield. This distracted Adam a little, who turned around to find out what had happened. Vanessa needed this, after which she immediately pressed another button in the laptop. From this, the glass that protected the driver from the passengers rose and firmly gave Adam a hand, and he dropped the gun. At this time, the next moment, she was already on her back so that Cody was on top and not injured. Then, quickly getting up, she with the child in her arms rushed to run until Adam was free from the trap. On the way, she did not stop calming the boy, saying that they would soon be home and that he was very brave. Running up to the house, Vanessa noticed that Adam's car was already parked in the yard, and terrible thoughts ran through her head. And then she saw the driver standing beside Oscar as if nothing had happened. At this time, Cody freed himself from her arms and rushed to run to his father. While Vanessa herself understood that something was wrong here, Oscar patted the baby on the head, praised the nanny for doing a great job, and said that she was hired. Now she realized that even Adam's dialogue was part of the whole plan. But he was just doing his job. Oscar remarked that he wasn't doing very well, because Vanessa had escaped before he pulled the trigger. The girl, although a little angry, repeated again that for such reasons, the door in the car should be unlocked. Oscar agreed with her, and Cody even began to praise her for not being bad, quite fast, and also hugged him. Vanessa realized that he had dragged his son into this, but he could not help but warn Cody, because the baby could then have a psychological trauma. Oscar also wanted to make sure that she could not be intimidated or bribed in this way, and he liked the result. He explained that this had happened to previous babysitters before, and Vanessa promised to keep an eye on Cody, but asked him to trust her. Oscar could not agree to this because he did not trust anyone or anything. When Vanessa asked about the reason, he admitted that his wife had disappeared a year ago. Then he took out of his pocket a wedding ring the size of a woman's finger and which was covered in blood. He then added that one thing the police had failed to mention in the reports, namely that his wife had been murdered. Oscar's face looked very sad and mournful. He even closed his eyes remembering his wife. Vanessa noticed how embarrassed little Cody was when his father remembered his mother. and realized that the boy was sad too. Then she asked the employer not to talk about it now, since the moment is not the most opportune. Oscar understood what the girl meant and asked his son to go to his room, but he objected, claiming that he was actually fine and did not really want to return to the house. Then Vanessa noticed the windows and asked where exactly the boy's room was. He made a slightly displeased face, not understanding why the new nanny needed the window of his room. The girl then jokingly suggested that the child's room should be the one with the lace curtains. Cody denied it, and Oscar explained that his son's room was on the opposite side of the house. Then Vanessa decided that it was the one with the flower pots. But the boy objected angrily again. Then he grabbed the nurse by the arm and dragged her with him, intending to show what his room really was. And before the girl had time to leave, Oscar notified her to come to his office in 10 minutes. After that, she went after the boy and his father only washed them off. Adam, who was standing nearby, noticed that he liked this girl and advised the owner not to scare her away. But Oscar believed that if Vanessa could be frightened, then she definitely did not belong here. The driver then approached the boss and shared the idea that she really smelled like oranges. Cody, on the way, thought that the nanny was trying to deceive him, but she really only wanted to take a look at his room. Vanessa explained to the boy that from what was there, she would be able to form an opinion about him. This was a bit of a surprise to Cody because no one had told him that before. The girl was really worried because he handled this kidnapping too well. She was also glad that it would not affect him too much. Meanwhile, they reached the room. The boy said that it was not cleaned since they had recently moved, and there was also something left from the previous owners. Then Cody clarified that these were children's things, but the nanny even liked such things. Still, she asked the boy that he could not show it if he did not want to, but he thought that it was just a room. The next moment they were already in a rather spacious room where a mess really reigned. Immediately, a large number of empty chocolate milk cartons caught my eye. Then the girl noticed that Cody had a lot of almost identical costumes, even more than the Undertaker. In the other corner, there was a corner for creativity which allowed the child to cope with inner experiences. Vanessa immediately thought that the boy needed to consume less sugar and also diversify his wardrobe. While the babysitter wasn't looking, Cody hurried to hide some of the toys under the pillows, feeling a little uncomfortable. He also explained the presence of empty boxes by the fact that the maid does not like him very much. The girl smiled again, not understanding how this could be because he was so wonderful. She even wanted to stroke the little one's children's hair. But he immediately waved him off and then, looking from under his forehead, he said rather rudely that he did not need a new mother. But Vanessa did not even try. She understood that no one would ever replace the child's own mother. She also explained to the boy that she could stop caring about him so much if he didn't like it. He only replied in the same displeased tone that she should only continue to do her work. Vanessa tried to play along with him again and accepted his order. But he reminded her that it was time for her to go to her father. The girl realized that the right time had really come and immediately went to the boss's office. On the way, the nurse thought that this child was too stubborn, but at the same time, he could be understood. Soon, she was standing in front of the door and knocked cautiously on the wooden barrier. Oscar invited her in, and Vanessa immediately determined that this man had changed a little in such circumstances. Oscar did not look so terrible as he did to the Dawn's deputy. Immediately, the girl reported that she had left Cody in his room and asked if it was scary. Oscar explained that if he was in the house, then it was normal and also admitted that he had put pressure on the nanny a little earlier. But the girl did not think that it was not much at all. Rather, the opposite. She promised her boss to get to the bottom of it, no matter what it cost her. What Vanessa meant was that those who had killed Mrs. Oscar were now threatening their son as well. And she was ready to protect the boy, as well as sort everything out so that Cody would no longer be in danger. Oscar confirmed that the threats began from the moment his uncle, a mafia don, appointed the boy as the next head. At the same time, the girl noted that the contract did not indicate that his family was being threatened, and she also added that such obligations are not included in the terms of the signed contract. At the same time, Vanessa realized that the boss did not read the fine print and decided to use this as leverage. Oscar recalled that she was trained in self-defense But the girl objected that she had recently graduated and he should have taken a more experienced worker. Oscar, in turn, also began to resist and claimed that he had hired exactly whom he needed. The girl did not immediately understand what he meant and asked for a more detailed explanation. For a moment, she even thought that this man knew about her past, and guessed that she had come for answers. But Oscar only explained that he did not need anyone else, and asked what conditions the nanny had in order to stay. After all, Vanessa realized that this task was much more difficult than the one she had signed up for. And he began to offer compensation options. The man offered to increase the payment, although the girl was going to provide him with new conditions before. And while she remained silent, Oscar continued to offer her various incentives such as a house in Majorca or connections in politics, but Vanessa considered all this useless if she did not go. And she also wondered why he needed her. And then the girl asked the owner to give her full access to everything she needed. Oscar asked her to clarify, and the girl added that absolutely everything, as it would help protect the boy. Oscar found such an application even interesting, and her work ethic seemed selfless to him. But Vanessa has stated that she just wants to survive this mission, so she wants to use all possible ways. The boss thought about it, because there were some things he could not provide her. Neither a business account nor customer data. The nanny was not interested in his business and promised not to look at what she did not need at all. The conversation began to take on a more amusing character for Oscar, and he again asked to clarify what she was trying to achieve. Oscar was also interested in what all this would give the girl. That she was so scrupulous about everything. After quickly going through several options in her mind, Vanessa stated that she had an even more personal request. Then, taking a deep breath, the girl asked the boss to leave a guaranteed excellent review for her. After all, she was putting her life on the line for Cody. And if he was okay in the end, she wanted her work to be appreciated. The girl also asked Oscar to become the highest patron for the Elite Nanny Academy. After listening to Vanessa, Oscar thought that her demands were quite small, but she asked again and he promised that he would do it in a year when it was time to leave Chicago. But then Oscar looked at the nanny a little threateningly and said that everything would be different. If something happened to his son, if this happens, then the girl will very much regret that she did not die during her task. And although Vanessa was not a fearful person, these words still made her think a little. The appearance of the boss at this moment was so menacing that it even seemed to her that he could hit her. But he did nothing of the sort, but only made her feel at home. Leaving the office, the girl realized that he was talking seriously, and it could be read in his eyes. Vanessa was well aware that a person like him would kill her very slowly in case of a mistake, but at the same time, she was well trained and knew that elite nannies never make mistakes. Then she met a driver in the hallway who was dragging her suitcases into the room. Although she could have done it herself, Adam felt that she had had enough of the challenges for today, and also expressed his joy that she was staying. He was going to take the luggage to the second floor. And at this time, he invited the girl to inspect the house. Then he clarified that for the next year, it would be her home, unless something irreparable happened. Vanessa looked at this man and could not tell whose side he was on, for her or against her. Nevertheless, she listened to his advice and went to look around. Noticing that the house resembled a small palace, then she decided to take a walk in the garden and at the same time to see how safe it is. Not far from the door, Vanessa noticed a security guard she had already known unofficially. It was the same guard she had recently killed to save the boy. When she reached the fence, the girl saw that it was 3 meters high and there was barbed wire at the top. In addition, in some places, she noticed several more guards as huge as the first one. Walking further, Vanessa saw that there were also beautiful things here, such as fountains. And yet, this place, where she learned that a boy usually plays, did not seem like a playground to her. Therefore, the girl thought that it would be very good if she took the child to the park somehow. Back in the house, Vanessa went to look for her room and saw that it was quite spacious. But it wasn't luxury that bothered her, and she took advantage of the moment to charge her laptop. But when she opened the briefcase, the girl noticed with horror that the device was not in it and began to remember where she had left it. After going over recent events in her head, Vanessa realized that she had left the laptop in the car. This happened exactly at the moment when she jumped out with the boy. Looking out the window, she hoped that she would be able to take it right away. But there was no car in the yard. Then Oscar came in to the nurse and invited her to join him at dinner, which was already ready. Vanessa immediately asked how she could get her laptop, and the boss promised that Adam would take care of it. Then she inquired about the boy and learned that he had decided to dine in his room that day. She also wondered how often it happened that Cody didn't join the table. Oscar explained that his son had been doing this lately, and the girl decided that it was due to the loss of his mother, and then the boss turned around and angrily said that he did not need her reasoning at all. After all, he knows his son very well and does not want to hear anyone's opinion about his feelings. Then he repeated to the nurse again that she had only to worry about the boy's safety. At this time, Cody was standing outside the door and trying to imperceptibly overhear what the adults were talking about. But Vanessa still heard some rustling outside the door of the boy's room. Oscar did not pay attention to this, as he hurried to go where he was going, and the girl realized that Cody heard everything, and this upset her because he was still too young. Then she went to the dining room, where she was invited to sit down at a huge table. Vanessa thought there was too much food. Even though she was hungry, she thought it was too much. Oscar was already sitting opposite her, ready to start his meal, while looking at her. The girl, of course, was trained in etiquette, but she still felt a little uncomfortable. At the academy, she was taught small talk with her employer, and she decided to start a conversation. Vanessa first asked what had brought Oscar to Chicago. When she heard that it was just a business, it seemed a little strange to her because he was not from the local mafia. That company had no influence here, and it also knew that the local mafioso families would not welcome him. Then Vanessa suggested that a man with Oscar's position could make a lot of noise in the city. Her interlocutor agreed with her opinion in a relatively calm tone, because it really was. And the nanny noticed that Oscar did not feel remorse, as if he did not understand what risk he was exposing his son to. However, she did not stop the conversation and decided to ask the boss something else. The girl was curious about Oscar's goals for the coming year, but he did not quite understand her question. Vanessa explained that if nothing special was planned, she could teach the boy a language or other art. Oscar hesitated a little with his answer, as if he were considering a proposal. Then the girl heard that Oscar had thought about it earlier, believing that the boy really needed to learn something. But at the same time, he hoped that Cody, as the future heir of Parvalone, should live up to certain expectations. Then the door to the dining room opened, and one of the maids entered, bringing a drink to the table. Vanessa found it a little strange and suspicious that the maid had come in at that very moment. She noticed people here as strange, as if they looked like ghosts, and she only met the driver. The girl was also very interested in why she was the only one invited to dinner with the boss. Then Vanessa decided that it was because she was only here for the first day, and still decided to play along with such a strange gesture of greeting. Then the girl began to ask what Cody was doing all day and heard that her father usually took him to work with him. She did not think that this was right for the child, and said that from now on, this will no longer happen. At that moment, she noticed that the boss's mood changed, and he even noticeably clenched his fists. Then Oscar ordered Julia's maid to leave them for a while, and he was going to clarify something. Vanessa noticed the mysterious look of the maid and realized again that something strange was definitely going on here. Then Oscar got up from his chair and asked the nurse to follow him, and headed for the door. The girl wanted to ask him something else, but he advised me not to say another word for the time being. A guard stood outside the door as usual, and Oscar motioned for him to do something. The girl walked past this huge man, thinking that he had been ordered to do something to her, but he remained standing still, and Oscar himself grabbed her by the arm and dragged her in the other direction. The girl was a little glad that the boss did not scold her in front of others, but on the other hand, it seemed too much to her. When they stopped, Vanessa immediately began to apologize for allowing herself to say too much. But Oscar interrupted her that she should not apologize at all. And in this, he fully agrees with her. Then he asked the girl to feign fright, but she did not understand why it was necessary. Oscar repeated his request again, squeezing her hands tightly. And she agreed. Then the guard saw how the boss was shaking the girl, and she began to scream as if before death. After that, Oscar hit her behind a tree again and said that he had only one goal for Cody. He was about to say this when a rustle was heard nearby, and the chief fell silent. A moment later, one of the guards appeared in front of them, as if blocking the light of the moon with his huge body. The boss asked what he needed and found out that there were some problems in the third district. Realizing that the situation was not trivial, Oscar invited the girl to talk later, and he went on business. Left alone, Vanessa tried to understand why this man was so afraid to speak in front of everyone. The next morning, the girl heard Cody interrogating someone quite menacingly. The boy claimed that he would find out anyway if someone dared to steal from the Oscar family. Opening the door to Cody's room, the girl saw the toll interrogating the duckling in the dim light. It even seemed a little strange to her that a boy at such an age was learning to torture interrogators. However, she still called him and invited him to join her for breakfast. But he was going to eat in the room. Vanessa smiled and assumed that the boy was just afraid to eat human food in front of her. Cody didn't quite understand what his nanny meant by human food, but he wondered. Then she decided to play along with the baby and promised that she would not tell anyone his secret. The boy didn't understand what secret she was talking about, and Vanessa explained that he was actually a vampire. She also explained this by the fact that he does not go anywhere and also eats only when no one sees his fangs. But Cody objected and explained in response that he was not a vampire and simply did not want to eat with her. To this, Vanessa admitted that she herself had already eaten, so the kitchen was completely at the boy's disposal. Then she decided to leave him alone, inviting him to meet later downstairs. When the babysitter left, Cody was still dissatisfied for a while, not understanding why she wouldn't leave him behind. Then he noticed the duckling's gaze and ordered him not to look at him like that. After breakfast, Vanessa washed the dishes and was glad that the boy had finally eaten out of the room. On one of the plates, she noticed that he had drawn a vampire's face with fangs with sauce. The girl considered it a little impudent, but still she was glad that the child ate. And while she was finishing cleaning, after thinking for a while, she heard someone enter the kitchen. Turning around, Vanessa saw a woman in an apron in front of her and realized that it was Mrs. Kenneth. She immediately asked what the nanny was doing here, and the girl reported that from now on she would keep an eye on Cody's breakfast and lunches. Vanessa also promised not to disturb Mrs. Kenneth, and she noticed that the new employee cleaned up well. Then the maid reached for one of the cabinets, almost pushing Vanessa, and explained that Oscar wanted coffee. In the process of cooking, Mrs. Kenneth asked how the girl had slept, and she lied that everything was fine. In fact, the girl did not close her eyes because she could not get rid of the feeling that she was constantly being watched. Then Vanessa began to ask the maid if she had seen her laptop, which she really needed. But Mrs. Kenneth did not understand what was good about this technology and thought it was better to read a book. At that moment, the voice of the owner was heard from the door, who asked where his coffee was. Vanessa immediately turned and noticed how calm Oscar was now, but she was sure that he was just pretending that nothing had happened last night. Oscar noticed the girl's curious look and decided that she had some kind of problem. She didn't say anything to him, only to check if little Cody was okay. At the same time, Vanessa could not fully understand her boss, because yesterday he wanted to tell her about his son. Approaching the boy's room, she again heard him menacingly communicating with the duckling and realized from whom he had picked up such a thing. And while the child remained busy, Vanessa decided to go and find out what happened to her laptop. Entering her room, the girl noticed that the device was already lying on a small table. Vanessa was just eager to investigate, and she decided to take advantage of her free moment. Oscar did not tell her anything about his biography, so she decided to use a search engine. Opening the laptop, the girl immediately entered Oscar's crimes in the south of the country, and soon she was able to read that this family had been running a mafia group for 100 years. Oscar's uncle is now a don due to his older brother dying and handing over the rule, but the uncle had no sons of his own, so his nephew became his deputy, and Cody is the heir now. The girl was beginning to understand why this child was so serious and behaved like this. Then Vanessa decided to see what they wrote about Parvalone on the dark web, and immediately began to poke at the keyboard. There. On some sites, the girl read that despite his short stay here, he had already managed to make enemies. At the same time, Vanessa could not understand why this man was doing this and climbing through the thick of problems. And then it occurred to the girl that Oscar must have run out of business in the South. Then she heard Cody calling her a mad aunt. But it didn't make her angry at all. The girl immediately closed the laptop and went to see what the boy needed. Entering his room, she saw that a duckling was already stacked in her laptop bag. And Cody himself was looking for something. The boy could not find his favorite tie, and he was going to go to a night event with his father. The girl realized that Cody did not yet know that his father was not going to take him with him, and she began to think about how to explain this to him. Immediately, she offered to stay at home and play while Mr. Parvalone sorted out his business, but Cody was sure that his father needed his help because he was going to meet people who hated the Parvalone family. This was new information for Vanessa, and she even wondered how the little boy knew this. Cody also believed that when he was around his father, he was underestimated, and that was their advantage. Then the boy suddenly began to ask the nurse to support him when his dad came. The girl did not know what to answer. And then Oscar entered, who asked his son to stay with Vanessa. He himself was going to return only the next evening and believed that it would be safer for his son to stay at home. This upset the boy very much, and he tried to remind his father of what his uncle wanted. But he did not agree and insisted that Cody should stay in the house so he would be calmer. As he was leaving, Oscar turned to his nurse and asked her to keep a close eye on his son. Then the girl decided to take the chance and asked the boss to stay a little longer. He did not understand what she needed but decided to listen, thinking that it might be important. At this time, Cody stared attentively at the nanny, hoping that she would still ask his father to take the little one with him, but the girl did not say anything of the sort, but only asked for access to his security system again. At that moment, the boy felt betrayed and abandoned, as if his last hope had been shattered. And Oscar didn't have time to do it right now, but he promised that he would talk to Vanessa about it when he returned. After that, Oscar closed the door behind him. Leaving his son and a nanny who was now offended by the whole world, the girl decided to defuse the situation and offered the little one to have dinner together. But Cody didn't want anything, and he asked the nurse to leave him alone and leave. Vanessa wanted to say something else to him, but Cody shouted at the top of his voice for her to get away. The girl still tried to persuade him, promising that they would have fun together. But the boy didn't see anything fun in it, and was sure that his father just decided to leave him behind. Vanessa had no choice but to leave the boy's room, and he slammed the door behind her. In a way, she was well aware of how Cody was feeling, because she had once been in a similar situation. In the girl's memories of her burning home resurfaced, and there was nothing funny about it. That night, Vanessa could not sleep. Again, she was overcome by the feeling of surveillance. She searched the entire room for cameras but found nothing. And yet the feeling did not leave her. But despite all this, it was time for her to get ready to resume her duties. She also looked at her perfect room and thought that there was something terrible behind it all. But then Vanessa noticed the rising sun and decided to go out onto the balcony to admire the rays. After standing there for a couple of minutes, she returned to the room and decided to look into the search engine. And immediately she saw that Cody was already comfortably seated on her bed, and the nanny invited him to breakfast. The boy still refused. And then Vanessa offered to take him to the park after breakfast. Cody still refused to eat her disgusting food, and even more so, was not going anywhere. But then suddenly, he became interested in the park and asked the nanny to tell him more about it. The girl told him about the playground on the street and also told him that there was a zoo in another place. But it's smelly. At this point, the boy admitted that he actually liked the Plaza de Alboa very much. But Vanessa did not know where it was. He explained that this is in the center of the city, between the rivers, and there are many trees and benches, as well as fountains. The boy also admitted that they often went there with his dad and fed the ducks there. Already knowing a little about the character of the boss, the girl tried to imagine this picture. Still, she agreed to go there with Cody. but on the condition that they have breakfast together. After a while, Vanessa watched as her foster child fed the ducks breadcrumbs. At the same time, he asked the birds not to fight since he had enough bread for everyone. But they continued to cackle. Watching Cody, the nanny saw that this boy really missed his father, who disappeared somewhere all day. Soon, the boy got tired of feeding the ducks, which by nature did not stop fighting, and threw the rest of the bread into the fountain. Then he turned to Vanessa, asked her to buy him ice cream. The girl noticed that it was time for dinner and did not want him to spoil her appetite. But the boy asked again, even with the word please, and added that his dad always bought him ice cream. At this moment, the baby looked so adorable that Vanessa could not refuse him. But only one ball. She then pointed towards the ice cream tent and invited him to go there. Cody objected and explained that his father always buys him in the old quarter, as there is even pistachio there. The girl agreed since he wanted this ice cream so much, and they went there. There were a lot of people in the area, and it seemed like a place for tourists. Approaching the seller, Vanessa immediately asked for pistachio ice cream with chocolate chips for the boy. At the same time, the girl addressed him in French, and from his reaction, she realized that she still needed to learn. In a moment, the ice cream in the cone was ready, and the nanny took out her phone to pay through the terminal. At this time, Cody was looking carefully at the ice cream, which he was eager to taste. But suddenly, he came to his senses and ran away from there as if a pack of bandits were chasing him. Vanessa barely had time to see which way the boy was heading before disappearing into the crowd. She immediately hurried after him, intending to catch up with him, but he had already disappeared around the corner. At first, the girl could not understand why Cody did not take the ice cream he asked for. She began to call him, only he did not call him names. And then she began to understand where Oscar's son could go. Oscar was driving to an important meeting at that time, and he decided to devote the time on the road to thinking. Soon, the driver told him that an incoming video call had been received, and he asked from whom. Adam immediately replied that his uncle wanted to talk to him. But Oscar didn't even want to talk to him at that moment. He only asked to clarify what Uncle Johnny needed. Since he decided to call in the middle of the day, the driver could not know what it was, but advised not to keep his uncle waiting. Then Oscar agreed to talk to him and asked the driver to connect with him. Opening the laptop in the salon, Oscar pressed the button, and immediately his uncle appeared on the screen. The caller's voice sounded slightly worried, and Oscar even thought at first that something serious had happened. But he began to ask how things were going, and his nephew admitted that it remained to coordinate with one more group. Johnny listened and then asked Oscar not to start a war, because he knew his character well. These Mexicans were well versed in weapons, but they were not very good with luxury goods. And this may come in handy. Contacts with loggers, as well as connections in Chinese retail chains, will also help with this. Johnny was pleased with such news, because soon they would be able to brand the city with their seal. In addition, the Normans are very much waiting for Oscar to prepare the ground, and he promised to do everything right. Uncle Johnny also did not forget to mention that the future empire would later go to his son. He also asked his nephew never to forget for whom all this was being done, and he again promised that everything would be fulfilled. After that, Uncle Johnny asked to be told when everything was ready and then asked about his son. Oscar briefly told how that case and the uncle made a toast to this little mafioso. After the conversation, an employee came into Johnny's office. Her robe was covered in blood, and she said that they were ready. This was good news for the Don, and he wondered if he had caused much trouble. He prepared to go, thinking what the man would tell him this time. And he wanted something new. Listening to Johnny's predictable lies seemed boring and tiresome. While the mafiosi were going about their business, little Cody was committing his little crime. Having run away from his nanny, he intended to find some means of transport to go to his father. The boy had to run for quite a long time, and he was even a little out of breath. But he did not give up. Soon, he got to the bus stop and immediately approached the first bus he came across. The driver told the boy that the bus was going to the station, and he needed to go there. After paying the fare, Cody went to the cabin, where he found a comfortable seat for himself and sat down. Looking out the window, he noticed that Vanessa was running down the street looking for him and decided not to stick his head out. The only thing he worried about now was that he would be able to get to his father and meet him soon. Vanessa herself rather perceived it as a game of hide and seek, because she was confident in her skills, and Cody, who had been on the road for a while, felt that his legs were a little swollen and got up to stretch his legs. A few minutes later, he already arrived at the right stop and got off the bus. But as soon as the boy came down from the step of the transport, he immediately saw a familiar face in front of him. About 8 minutes ago, the nanny, who was sure that she would quickly find the boy, began to think over a plan. She went over in her head the possible ways of his escape. Glancing at the stop near which the bicycles were parked, at the same time, the girl knew that although Cody walks quickly, he still won't last long. Then Vanessa thought about a bicycle, but did not yet know if the boy could ride it, and the most suitable option she saw was a trip by bus or taxi where he only had to pay. Then the girl closed her eyes to get a better idea of which way Cody might be heading. Moreover, the boy most likely chose the fastest way to get to his goal. Vanessa also remembered how he went through his things in search of a tie to go with his father. But Oscar decided to leave the boy at home that day, for the first time in a long time. And now the nurse was just sure that Cody was determined to find his father to be with him again. Then Vanessa listened to the conversation of some girls discussing a child in a cute suit. At the same time, the girls were glad that children can safely travel by public transport here. Vanessa realized that they were talking about Cody and immediately began to ask which bus he had taken. The girl was a little confused by the suddenness, but the nurse repeated her question, only this time softer, and then she admitted that she saw the boy get on a bus heading to the station. The nurse realized that the boy was heading to the intercity train station, and it would take about 15 minutes to get there. Now she was ready to show what training in the Academy of Elite Nannies was capable of. And soon Vanessa noticed a man who was holding a bicycle with a trunk in front, and a dog was sitting there. She immediately approached this man and quite politely asked him to lend her a transport. While the man was moving away from the charm of the cute girl, he remembered that his dog was still in the basket. Vanessa herself guessed that they would miss each other, and immediately returned the dog to its owner. Finally, Vanessa promised to leave the bike in the parking lot and hit the road. The girl rushed along the road, passing cars that were going in both directions and honking at her through one. When she reached the bridge, there was a long traffic jam and she knew that she would be too late. Therefore, Vanessa decided to test her parkour skills and drove off the bridge. Then, flying over a baby stroller a couple of seconds later, it landed on the sidewalk, scaring pédestriens qui descendent. But she had no time to pay attention to them, as she wanted to have time to intercept the boy. At the same time that the babysitter was riding her bike, Cody was still riding the bus, getting closer to his goal. It seemed to him that this trip lasted a very long time, and he was pretty bored during this time. And after a while, Vanessa had already arrived at the station and began to look out for the bus she needed from afar. Public transport had not yet arrived and she had time to park her bike. She found a secluded place for a two-wheeled transport near the stop, and she went on foot. The girl still had a minute to spare before the bus arrived, and she prepared to meet the little fugitive. This minute flew by quite quickly, and the bus drove up to the right stop. Cody, who was sitting there, was just getting ready to go out and stretching his legs before leaving. All in thought, the unsuspecting boy soon came down the step of the bus, and Vanessa was already sitting at the bus stop, and now she was seriously going to talk to the boy. Cody was seriously frightened when he saw the nanny in front of him, but he could not understand how she found him so quickly. The girl only leaned over to the boy and asked where he was going to go all alone. Then she grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and added that he wouldn't get any more ice cream. After that, Cody tried to break free from her grip, but he couldn't and was angry that she had crumpled his suit. Vanessa assured the boy that a rumpled suit at the moment was the least of his problems. He still did not stop, trying to free himself, and shouted for the nurse to let him go. Without hesitation, the girl shook his jacket, and the boy fell out of it at the same second. Landing on his heel, the boy felt an unpleasant pain. But now he was more concerned about something else. He began to shout to Vanessa that he hated her. And the girl admitted that she was very sorry to hear this. Cody began to cry and curled up in a ball on the sidewalk, continuing to blame his nanny for not taking him with her. Because of her. But Vanessa objected because her job was to protect the little one. And she also tried to explain to him how dangerous his actions were. The boy still stood his ground, claiming that his father, who was now alone, was also in danger. The nanny tried to calm Cody down by saying that there were many bodyguards by his dad's side, but he thought they were all traitors. Then the boy directly shouted that after what happened to his mother, his father simply could not trust any of them. After that, Cody repeated Uncle Johnny's words that only family can be trusted. So he tried to protect his dad. Vanessa realized that in the boy's opinion, the bodyguards deliberately allowed the death of his mother. She tried to reassure the boy that the guards were doing their best back then. But Cody objected, stating that she didn't really know anything. The girl really didn't know how his mother was actually killed. But she understood the feelings he was experiencing. But Vanessa decided to convince the boy that he was wrong. And she did know something. Then, sitting down next to him, the girl sincerely admitted that she herself was not like those guards who had been before. She promised to protect Cody with all her might, even if she had to save him from himself. Then she explained that he could hate her, even fight with her, but he would not be able to escape from her. The boy objected and quite confidently stated that he would still try to escape. After that, there was silence between them for a few seconds, and they only looked at each other. Cody still had no choice, and, obeying the nanny, he returned home with her after dinner. Vanessa, as usual, began to wash the dishes, and the boy began to ask to go to his room. Naturally, the girl tried to keep him close to her, although he swore that he would not run away again. The nurse had no doubt about it because she was not going to take her eyes off him until his father arrived. A little later, Vanessa put the boy to bed and turned on the light in his room so that it was not so bright. Cody still hadn't fallen asleep. He wanted to wait for his father to put him to bed when he returned. The girl promised the little one that as soon as she saw her boss, she would immediately convey Cody's wish to him. Then she left him alone. And he wrapped himself in a blanket almost up to his head and felt that he was a little tired from the day. Vanessa also found this day quite active, and she decided to sit down for a while out of fatigue, sitting right next to Cody's door. The nurse also remembered that she had not slept at all for the previous 2 nights. It made her even more tired. But she couldn't let Cody run away again. Her eyelids, however, were very heavy, and Vanessa decided to close her eyes for a moment so that at least the fatigue would come down a little. Unbeknownst to herself, the girl fell into a deep sleep, such that she did not even hear anything. In this position, when she was curled up, she was found under the door by Oscar without touching the sleeping nanny. He decided to immediately check how his son was and went to his room. The boy was not quite asleep yet. As soon as he had time to doze off, he heard his father return. Oscar, leaning over him, confirmed that he had indeed returned, and Cody muttered that he missed him. The father asked the kid how his day with the nanny went, and he admitted that he almost got rid of her. Then the boy added that Vanessa was stupid, and he tried to run away from her to help his father. Oscar asked how his son knew where he was, and it turned out that Adam always entered the GPS coordinates in advance. Oscar noticed that his son was cunning, and he also admitted that he also overheard the conversation of the guards. This showed the father how attentive his son was, and he was proud of this quality of his. Then the boy also admitted that Vanessa caught him, did not let him on the road, and returned home. It was time for Oscar to leave, but he promised his son that when he woke up, he would see him at his bed again. After bidding the baby good night, Oscar left his room quietly. Closing the door, there was one more task left unsolved, and the man needed to do something with the sleeping ball in his skirt. However, he was in no hurry and first decided to put back on the shirt that he had taken off a little earlier. The shirt was just covered in blood, and Oscar did not want his son to see him in this form. Then he looked at Vanessa again. And in this position, she seemed to him no more dangerous than a kitten. At the same time, Mr. Parvalone also understood that no matter what, his son was safe. Bending over to the girl, he tried to wake her up with soft words, trying to call her. The nurse heard the whisper of the boss in her ear and opened her eyes. But she did not have the strength to get up yet. Vanessa could only turn her head to him and realize that he had indeed returned. After that, Oscar helped the girl up and was going to accompany her to the room so that she could lie down normally. But Vanessa didn't want her boss to care so much about her and said she could walk herself. He did not argue with her and let her go. But as soon as he did, the nanny immediately almost fell back. Oscar was not confused, picked up the girl again so that she would not hurt herself, and insisted on seeing her off. Vanessa was well aware that she had become very weak and had lost a lot of strength during these 2 days without sleep. At the same time, the boss did not scold her because he understood that Cody just wanted to meet him. And the nanny in turn decided to put a beacon in the boy's shoe, which Oscar considered very reasonable. Still holding the girl who was falling asleep as she walked, Oscar reached her room at some point. The girl poked her nose into his clothes and noticed a rather unpleasant smell. Vanessa knew perfectly well what the smell was. Because the boss smelled of blood, Oscar only grinned that the smell did not seem as pleasant to the girl as oranges. After that, Vanessa pushed him away from her and tried to enter the room herself. Holding on to the furniture, she just kept muttering, "That little Cody should be kept away from all this." Oscar leaned over her again and asked her not to shout about it if she cared about her life. The girl was even surprised that her words really sounded loud. She did not notice it due to fatigue, although at the same time, she knew perfectly well how her words should sound when she shouted. The boss did not want to argue with her anymore and only advised the girl to sleep well. But she could not sleep in this house. Although she herself was already falling off her feet and dreamed of getting to bed, she tried to explain to her boss that someone was constantly watching her for some reason. The next moment, the nurse was lying on the bed and could not utter a single word more. At that moment, only one thought swirled in front of her closed eyes, that she had to sleep. Mr. Parvalone was even a little surprised that Vanessa was able to understand that she was being watched. He thought that she had good intuition, and he was happy about it. Because she would definitely need her, he himself knew well that the girl still had a lot to do. But now he decided to leave her to sleep. The next morning, Vanessa was glad that she had finally managed to sleep and now she felt less tired. Then she began to remember being escorted to the room by Oscar, and she felt embarrassed. In addition, that evening her internal signals of alarm and danger did not react at all. She thought it was strange enough because Oscar was the man she should be most afraid of. But after being with these people for a while, Vanessa realized that they were not what she had imagined them to be. And Cody himself did not look like a victim who needed to be rescued and protected. Oscar, who was a member of the mafia, also did not look like some kind of villain at all. The girl knew that he wanted safety for his son. But for some reason he brought him to Chicago like a hornet's nest. Thinking about all this, it seemed to Vanessa more and more that something did not add up, but she could not understand what. Then she remembered again the moment when her boss woke her up at Cody's door. This even made the girl feel a little ashamed because at that moment, she felt something she should not forget about the Academy's ban on emotional attachment. But there was no more time to distract herself. Vanessa knew she needed to find answers and was going to remind her boss of full access, and this time, she hoped to get it. At the same time, she decided that her heart should become an impregnable stone for these mafiosi. Thinking about it, she did not immediately notice Cody, who rushed past her in an inflatable duck and almost knocked her down. The boy was in a hurry somewhere so that he did not even always fit into the turns, hitting them with a duck. Vanessa decided to immediately figure out what had happened and where little Cody was rushing so much. At the same time, the nurse continued to call the boy to stop and talk to her. In the chase, Vanessa found herself in the courtyard where there was a large pool and several sun loungers. On one of them, the girl immediately noticed Oscar, who was comfortably seated under the sun, from his well-built figure and excellent physical shape. The girl was even confused for a moment, seeing hair. Oscar explained to her that today was their pool day and they were not doing anything else. All the more, he wanted to rest after the events of the previous night. When he again noticed an unknown car near the gate, Oscar was still awake and he liked to look out the window sometimes, and then he noticed someone else's transport. This car stopped near his house for the third time in a week. Oscar did not find it strange that the mysterious watchers did not even try to hide. At the same time, he drew a kind of investigation board on the map on which he marked all the events. And after a while, his work began to bear fruit and a more understandable picture emerged. Glancing at the map and markers once again, Oscar even thought that he had overdone it. Then he went to tell his son, who was still eager to spend time with his father. Oscar promised the little one that they would definitely rest together the next day. And now, as they relaxed in the pool, Vanessa still couldn't figure out why it was the day. After all, the pool was in the courtyard all the time, and at any time you could come here to swim and sunbathe. Then the girl turned her attention to Cody, who jumped into the water with a bomb at a run. His jump immediately sent off a lot of splashes which reached Vanessa as well, almost wetting her. However, she decided to take advantage of the fact that Oscar would be with her son all day. And again, as for access to the system, Vanessa decided to start with a preliminary vulnerability analysis and recommendations for improvement. Oscar only grinned and said that the girl did not understand anything. Taking off his sunglasses and placing them next to him, he leaned closer to the girl so that she could hear immediately. Then Oscar repeated once again that today was their pool day and no one should do any work. After that, he himself went to the pool to refresh his body after lying under the sun for a while. Vanessa still couldn't understand what this had to do with her. Since she was not a member of their family, then the driver appeared on the threshold and immediately realized that the nanny had seen such an event for the first time. The girl assumed that it was scheduled for a schedule, but Adam explained that such days were completely random. Then he handed the nurse a towel, explaining that he had brought it especially for her and that she should join in. At the same time, the driver noticed that she would be a little hot in her uniform, so it would be better for her to change. Vanessa turned her attention back to Oscar and thought that she could not be quietly next to him now. Then she began to explain to the driver that she actually had a lot of work and she could not stay here. But Adam decided to explain to the girl in more detail, adding a reason why he did not cross this threshold. The fact is that someone who went to the pool on such a day can no longer just return. Vanessa still couldn't figure out what this strange rule was. But that was the whole point of the pool day. Then the driver began to tell that Oscar and Cody eat in the pool, and also sleep here too. But the nanny still did not want to participate in this. And immediately Kenneth appeared, who decided that Vanessa agreed. Then, without crossing the threshold, she asked the girl to pass the coffee to Oscar. Vanessa was equally reluctant to agree and tried to break past Adam, but he blocked her way to the exit. Realizing that she would not succeed, the nanny asked to bring her a laptop but found out that equipment was also not allowed on that day. And then Cody came up to her, who offered to dive with him for a ring, thinking that it was fun. And then behind her back, she heard Oscar's voice, who hinted that she would not be able to escape from here. The boy then shouted that the day by the pool was considered sacred and the nanny now only had to change her clothes. Oscar immediately pointed to one of the doors, explaining that there was a changing room. After a while, standing in her swimsuit, Vanessa realized that her plans to get answers today had failed and she decided to try to get along with Cody instead, so that he would not be so alien to her. Approaching the water, she saw that the boy was holding 3 rings in his hands and invited her to play again. Oscar, meanwhile, sipping coffee, watched with interest the actions of his son and his nanny, and Vanessa was already ready to jump into the water. And she decided to do it a little with effect. The next moment, she was cutting through the air with her hands and rapidly descending to the water. Oscar watched with curiosity as the girl made her jump head down. And a few seconds later, after the nanny disappeared under the water, she emerged with a ring in her hands. Cody immediately asked if his father had seen all this, and he nodded affirmatively. Then the boy told the nanny that he would be able to get the next ring first, then her. The next moment, they were both under the water, each trying to reach the ring as quickly as possible. And when they surfaced, the boy noticed that he was definitely missing something while they were underwater. and he was carried away by the capture of the ring. The nanny managed to pull the dark circle from him. Now she even teased him in a childish way, trying to play. But this only made the boy angry. Still, she did not separate him from the duck and soon joined the owner to sunbathe on a sun lounger. Oscar noticed that they were having fun, and Vanessa noticed that the boy had quite a lot of energy, and while the adults were resting, Cody continued to splash in the water, not wanting to get out of there at all. Then Oscar remembered how recently the girl was very eager to gain access to his security system. This even seemed a little suspicious to him because he decided that the nanny had ulterior motives to get closer to him. From such words, Vanessa even stopped chewing her sandwich because the boss himself promised to give her full access. After listening to the girl, Oscar sprawled on a chaise lounge like a model and asked if such full access was enough for her. It was definitely a joke on his part. But Vanessa, who knew him to be serious, couldn't believe he was joking. For a moment, she even thought that her boss had been replaced and now a completely different person was sitting in front of her. Adam, the driver, reappeared on the doorstep and asked the boss to talk to him. The driver never bothered Oscar just like that, and he immediately got up and came to find out what had happened. Vanessa even thought that after all the turmoil, Oscar would just leave, and so did Cody. Adam briefly explained the essence of the matter and advised that the boss needed to see it himself. But Oscar could not leave here because today was the day of the pool. But then he heard the words of his son, who also advised him to go. Oscar was even a little glad that his son understood him and was not angry. So he agreed. But before leaving, he turned to Vanessa and asked her to look after the boy. Then he soon disappeared behind the doors, and the girl managed to notice that her boss looked a little frightened at the same time. Vanessa was well aware that something had happened and something was not good, but she didn't know what it was. Presently, Oscar, following the driver, was heading towards one of the sections of the fence near the gate. At the same time, he interrogated Adam if he had time to see the license plate of the car, which again stopped at his house. The driver admitted that at that moment he was in the kitchen, but was sure that these people had been watching for a long time. When Oscar reached the place, he saw that a gutted teddy bear covered in blood was hanging on the bars of the fence. He asked Adam to check for explosives or a surveillance device and to dispose of the toy later. Meanwhile, Vanessa noticed that the boy was still sad and suggested that he dive for the rings again. But Cody got tired of this game, and the nanny offered to come up with some new entertainment. Vanessa was going to guess his favorite things, and if she made a mistake, Cody could push her into the water. And although this game seemed silly to the boy, the girl decided to play anyway and offered to start with his favorite animal. Cody only stared questioningly, and the nanny, when she made a rather thoughtful look, and then she tried to guess which animal he liked and named the giraffe. But it wasn't the kind of animal that Cody liked, and he even playfully pushed the babysitter into the pool. It seemed that the boy was beginning to like this game, and now he offered to guess what his favorite food was. The girl was sure that she knew this because she was his nanny after all, and she simply could not help but know after going through all the dishes that the boy ate with an appetite. She named asparagus. But this time Vanessa was wrong, and Cody pushed her into the water again. This time with even more enthusiasm, the girl somersaulted into the pool while pretending that she was significantly hit by the boy's push. This made Cody laugh even more, and he no longer tried to hide his childish laughter. Then he decided to confess to the nanny that she was not as bad as he had thought before. Then the girl noticed Oscar behind him and at the same time realized that he had not returned to continue bathing. Noticing the babysitter's gaze, Cody also turned around and was very glad that his father had returned. But he needed Vanessa. Oscar offered to call Adam to his son if he wanted to continue swimming. The girl, meanwhile, was not long in coming and was already getting out of the water. Especially since she herself was interested, she immediately asked the boss what had happened, but he did not want to talk about it in front of his son. Taking a towel from his neck, he threw it in the nurse's face and ordered her to come to his office in 10 minutes. Dry. Given how much time she had allotted, Vanessa knew she wouldn't have time to go to her room to get ready. Cody, meanwhile, shared with the babysitter that Adam wouldn't agree to swim with him because he didn't like to wet his hair. The girl found it quite interesting, and even had a few thoughts about it flashing through her head. But then she leaned over to the boy and asked him to tell him his favorite food.